Just pick the channel that you want, tune into the course that you'd like to watch, and then you just start learning. It's pretty cool. 24/7 free education. You can also purchase anytime on-demand access to all of our courses, and anytime access allows you to pause and rewind and learn at your own pace. We have over 500 courses to choose from, and we're constantly creating more. So the coolest part about that is that you can watch it at your own leisure. And during all of our live courses, you can also join the chat room to ask the instructor questions. This is a great way to participate in the Creative Live experience. So you click on the chat button below the screen you're watching, and it'll pop up these windows. So this is how you interact with the instructor and also interact with other students in real time. So you can sit on your couch in whatever country you're in and ask Andrew questions and get an answer in real time. All right, today you are on the Music and Audio channel, and this is Recording Rock Vocals with Andrew Wade. This man has so much experience in this industry, and he is just an incredible producer and an incredible musician. Wait till you hear this guy sing. Hopefully we're going to be listening to some of your music today, Andrew. Let's hope so.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Okay, well, welcome to Creative Live.
Thank you.
Day 2.
Awesome. Well, I want to start by actually talking about what you guys were commenting on a lot.
Okay,
I want everybody to understand that it's not about like tricking someone to get your way. The most important thing to think about is, well, not to think about, but the most important skill that you could ever have is knowing what's good, like knowing what the best thing is. And sometimes that isn't your idea. And sometimes you might think it's your idea, you might be attached to something, but there will be circumstances where you do have more experience and you know because you've done it over and over and over again that a certain thing doesn't really work with audiences and another thing might. And so somebody might be making a decision that's detrimental to their career and to your own. So when you're faced with those kind of situations, that's when you kind of want to do it. It's not like when you're a producer, you have ideas and it's your way or nothing. But when you're working with somebody else, especially when they might be talented, you may have an idea and you may be jumping the gun by trying to force your idea. Let them realize their own vision first, then decide if you actually do want to continue but to push your idea on them if it is indeed the better idea. It's not just about tricking someone to get your way. I hope you guys completely understand that. It's only in those certain circumstances that you would use that witchcraft.
Witchcraft. I mean, is it more about building an aesthetic then for your studio? I mean, one of the comments was, really doing it for each session, and that seems like even more of a difficult task to, be able to create that environment in each one. But I mean, aesthetic as opposed to getting your way, right?
Right. The most important thing is what is the best. Try to become a little bit detached from if there was some kind of tension or if there was an argument or something like that. Get detached from that. Think of, in the long run, what's going to be the best choice. That's what you're looking for. So sometimes you do need those tools to get to that point. And you do have to get through people's egos sometimes. So just so we're all clear and people don't think that I just trick everybody that comes in here. Well, in my studio, not here. Anyway, so today we're getting into stuff that can make or break your songs, which is pitch correction and, well, here's the roadmap here. Melodyne and pitch correction, editing, singing vocals. We're going to edit screaming vocals and group vocals. We're going to go through vocal effects and prep for mixing, and then we're actually going to get into mixing. So hopefully it goes well. I think it will. Okay, so let's first talk about editing. So this screen right here is like, if you are going to take notes or photos or screen caps, you need this list because this is the list that you edit in if you want a completely professional result. I always do it in this order because it is the best way. I don't even think it can be argued. Like, for anybody that is in this industry that does this kind of stuff, this is the best way to do it. First, we start with taking out, so 1 and 2 may or may not be able to be switched, whatever. Some of these might be switched off, but 1 and 2, depending on whatever, and we'll get into that because I'm actually going to do this stuff for you, just so you're not looking at a list. You're going to cut the silence. Sometimes there'll just be big spaces between words, and in the song that we're doing, there actually is spots like that, so we will be cutting the silence. You don't want to just cut out every single breath that you come in contact with, but there are some that you do want to cut, and there's going to be a purpose for that, and I'll talk about that. 2, nudging left and right to smooth edits. So between takes, sometimes, I'm sure you guys noticed from yesterday, not Cameron, that between some of the takes, you can hear the edit, and you don't want that. So sometimes what is leading into the next edit is off, maybe it's late, and then the other one is early. So what you want to do is kind of move those so they're in a natural transitional state, and we'll get into that. So after you do that, you want to make sure that sounds as natural as it can without doing any crossfade. You can't just rely on crossfades. So if you track properly, you can actually do these things. So after you get that in the right spot, you'll do a crossfade. There's a bunch of different types of crossfades. Some are good and some are bad, and I'll talk about the different types. Number 4 is optional. You can group tracks to create an alternate playlist if you're not confident in your editing skills. I kind of did this, or you just make other tracks to throw the original tracks on it, or save them in a folder or whatever. But what I do, I've done it for so long, and I'm very confident that I will be fine with my editing. So I don't do this, but if you're unsure, I encourage you to do number 4. Then we're going to send to Melodyne, and we're going to use Melodyne. This is going to be via Melodyne Bridge, which comes with Melodyne Studio. To me, Melodyne is the #1 pitch correction software that is available right now. And I will get into that when we actually do that and why. So then number 6, you actually Melodyne and correct the timing within Melodyne. And I'll give you tips on that, how to do that right and wrong. Then you send it back to Pro Tools via Melodyne Bridge. It's cool because it's just an automatic feature. You don't have to, there's no work really involved there. Now this is kind of, I think this might be Pro Tools specific because it has a send to Pro Tools option in Melodyne. So if you are using something else, Logic or a program like that, you may just have to use the standalone Melodyne app to do the kinds of things that we will be talking about today. There are alternatives, and I'm sure a lot of people are thinking that, well, I do it this way, I do it that way. There are very, very good reasons to do it the way that I'm going to explain today. Some shortcuts and things that might save you when you really messed up tracking or something like that. And then we're going to vocal line. We're going to get into that. Some people might not have any idea what that is. Then the last step, it's always going to be the last step. You might do 8 again, but 9, listen. Your ears are going to be your best friend for this. Make necessary changes, and then maybe revocal line if you have to do that. So number 9 is just going to be like very fine editing. So I always go in this order just by default. I don't look at this list. This is literally like the most logical and best workflow for getting a professional vocal sound. So I hope everyone takes that in, memorizes it, and understands it after today. Okay, so let's get right into it. This is what we're doing. We're going to be preparing for pitch correction, and I'll show you, we'll talk about nudging and crossfades. So we're in the session Take It Slow, which is, which is, these are Jessica's vocals. If you weren't here with us yesterday, she tracked this song live, and we're going to actually work with these vocal takes. And luckily, we don't have too many edits in here, really, so it's going to be easy for us. But when you do other things like maybe screaming or something where you have to punch it a lot, it becomes a little more of a challenge. And we will probably demonstrate with the next song because we did do screaming. All right, well, here we go. So I'm just starting here by, I want to just go back to this. Starting by just cutting the silence, anything that doesn't need to be there. This is a really handy shortcut if you're on a Mac. It's Option Shift Scroll Wheel, and you can. This is, I guess, Pro Tools specific, but it just zooms you in so you can really see what's going on in the tracks. So I'm looking here at the very beginning, just so you guys are aware. I'm gonna make this a different color. But these purple tracks here were all Jessica. And then the red one here is was the scratch vocal that I actually sent out to her. So you can see when you zoom in that there's a breath right here, and it's a very prominent breath. And that's the kind of breath that you would want to leave in. I don't see Jessica having a breath at the beginning there. Let's actually listen to this. Okay, so actually this is a great example here. You guys might not be able to hear that, but what she's doing is taking a really long breath before it, which is actually not ideal to start. It's sort of awkward. It's like whenever a vocalist is starting a long phrase, they'll take a bigger breath so they can get more out. But whenever you're going between words and between phrases, you're going to do short breaths. So to me, when I hear this, it's almost like she's just preparing for a long part. It's natural, but it's not.
Sorry to interrupt you. I wonder, I mean, how often does that happen? Is that pretty much every time where you're dealing with vocalists? Is it pretty common? Do some people actually have the ability to cut that out, or in the editing process is that just kind of one of the main, one of the many things you end up doing.
If you've ever seen a video called Chocolate Rain,
yeah, good.
He moves away
reference.
So he can breathe. Okay, and that's so. See, well, the thing about that's actually a good example. What that guy is doing, if you haven't seen the video, it's a guy who turns his head away every time he's breathing in, so it doesn't pick up on the microphone.
Okay.
Now, that would be the equivalent of like cutting out every single breath, which is not natural. Sometimes you want to hear that breath, and there are times when you don't need breaths. There are times when you do need breaths. This right here doesn't matter as much, and I'll show you guys where there's an emphasis on where natural breaths like absolutely have to be there and when they don't. This one to me is unpleasant, so it's getting deleted. I don't like it. Usually I have to consciously tell a vocalist how to do a breath or something like that. All right, I'm on a Mac. I gotta preface this again. I usually use PC, so a lot of these shortcuts are like backwards and the buttons are kind of weird, so you'll see me just fumble around for a little bit. But okay, so I'm going to also talk about some cool shortcuts when you're editing vocals because this can get very, very time consuming. Now, there's a few ways that you can do the fades. You can either do it as you go, like what I just did where I hit F, but sometimes you have a lot of work to do. I mean, we don't have that much to do here, but if you're in Pro Tools, and this is a Pro Tools specific shortcut, there's this, I don't know if you can see where my mouse is over here, but this tiny little icon enables you to do these quick key shortcuts. So if you have this little guy over here is yellow, then you can actually do these these quick little shortcuts like F will apply a fade. And this particular fade is a very standard, just a linear fade. You can choose different types. And right here, just for this specific case, the linear fade works fine. Okay, so let's move along. And you can also add breaths. I'm going to actually show you how to do this. So if you do listen to this and you don't like the way it sounds without a breath, you can add a breath from like another section, like say here. You could drag this over if you wanted a breath. You would take that crossfade out. But I will say for PC users, there's a really awesome shortcut to get rid of all fades. It does not exist on the Mac at all in any form. You hit Alt and then E, F, and D, and it will just get rid of any fades. So if you've done a whole bunch of fades and they're all like maybe the wrong fades or the wrong length, or you're editing drums, for instance, and you put a bunch of crossfades on and it's slowing down your session or something, and I don't know, for whatever reason you just want to get rid of them, you just hit Alt, then you hit E, then F, then D. You don't hit them all together, you just Alt, E, F, D. That shortcut does not exist on the Mac. Okay, so for something I'm going to demonstrate later, I'm just going to take that fade off for now because I'm going to show you a shortcut to do a bunch of fades just the way you want. Okay, so between these words, I can see that there's a big enough gap here that it's safe to cut this space out. Sometimes whenever you get pretty close, for instance, that's like the end of her note goes right into a breath right there. So if you did cut that out, you would be cutting out something that is natural and that is also good. I mean, this is natural and good is what I'm saying. And when you take that out, it's pretty unnecessary, especially for this style of music. Now this here doesn't match up. We're actually going to use only one of these 3 tracks that you're seeing in the final result. But we're going to edit all 3 of these for now. Okay. So for Melodyne and for Vocal Line later, we're going to edit these. See how I can explain this well. I did cut out this silence between all 3, but what I want to do is edit these so there's the same amount of silence after each word, because we're actually going to stretch some of these or shorten these. And if you have different length space after the word, it can become problematic for the steps we're doing later. So all this stuff matters, and it will save you time if you do these things right first. Also, here's the biggest mistake that I hear people make whenever they're editing vocals, whenever I get sessions from other bands. Let's listen to this breath really quick. We're talking about breaths here.
It's again.
Now, if you're listening at home, maybe I can turn this up. That breath is cutting in. It sounds like, almost like she's catching her breath or something. It is absolutely unnatural. Now, whenever you're applying heavy compression, like when you're doing screaming and stuff, these breaths are going to be clear as day. So you can either A, cut it out, but sometimes you actually don't want to cut it out. So B, let's say the take for whatever reason is just cut off like that. You can do a fade that makes it sound like a shorter and natural breath at the same time. So if something strange happened during tracking, you can actually just take care of that right away. However, luckily, we have the breath. Actually, we'll probably keep it a little bit shorter like that. Okay, so here we are. Here's another take. Where you can see she ended her word whenever, if you weren't here for yesterday, whenever you do tracking whenever you actually do a punch-in, you want them to lead in from the last vocal and then lead out to the next vocal, even if you're not recording it. Because what happens is, whenever you actually do it correctly, you get all the information you need to make natural sounding edits. So what we have here is you can easily see the end of the last word, the breath here, and then the beginning of these other words. Now, for whatever reason, at the end of this take, it stops here. We don't have any more. But luckily, we let in and we let out, so we have this breath, and we're actually able to crossfade it so it sounds natural going.
Like coals they burn up.
So, this is soloed, and you still can't even tell that there's a fade there. But we're actually going to take that fade off for now. We got more dead space here. Let me show you guys a cool shortcut, actually.
Andrew, so in general, I'm wondering, are you, when you're just first getting into the editing, are you basically looking for all the spaces and trying to clean out as much of the negative space and just create negative space as much as possible?
Yeah, sometimes, especially with these more delicate songs, some of the characters on the preamps or the microphones or whatever, like there may be a hiss, just a little bit, and sometimes you may not want that. So it's good to clear these silences. Sometimes they'll shift and you just hear their clothes or something. You can't see it, but it shows up. And whenever you do this, it's like, well, hey, we don't need this silence, and there may be weird noises in there. Like, I know where all these words are, and I know what should be there. So it's important to be familiar with what should be there, etc. And what a breath looks like. Looks like she took a pretty long one here. So yeah, this is a shortcut. So you don't have to go through all these. I'm just getting really into detail with this stuff, just so you guys really understand these concepts. This is called strip silence. It's also Pro Tools specific. And what it does is it'll actually cut this stuff out for you. You just set the threshold. You kind of have to mess with it here. Usually I'll have if you guys want a starting point, the settings that actually come up when you hit Command U brings up strip silence. So anytime you bring it up, it's usually in settings that aren't actually very helpful. So if you do want a starting point, this is pretty good starting point. You'll want the strip threshold at around 40 to 30 or so if you're doing vocals. Again, you'll have to adjust these, but this is a good starting point. Minimum strip duration you're going to want really low. I mean, you could almost have that at 0. I'd maybe put it no less than 20, and that's not really necessary at all for what we're doing. So that's a good starting point there. The start pad, as you can see, you can see it moving. It shows you where it's actually going to cut it. So if you do have a breath, you just move it out, and it will just automatically get those breaths, because usually the threshold that you have it set at will probably cut the breaths out automatically. So if you have a long session, you don't have a lot of time to really spend doing this, and that usually is the case, especially when you're doing a lot of work and you're mixing a full length and you get sent hundreds of vocal tracks. It's really going to eat up your time. So you need these shortcuts. You need a quicker way to get this stuff done. So I don't know if there is an equivalent to this in other programs, to be completely honest. It's not the same as a noise gate, because a noise gate doesn't have, for instance, the pad before it, and it also doesn't do this. Doesn't do a physical edit of the thing. So if you did have, let's pretend we just used a noise gate. This is what it would look like. This is what you would get. It would just cut out, and then suddenly what you have to do is cut out the silence, and then you have to apply the fades. So it's actually kind of, especially if you have a breath sounding strange, you will have to go in there and you will have to edit it if you use the noise gate. So to me, that's one advantage of using the strip silence instead of a noise gate. Also, a lot of noise gates, if you have the noise gate on the actual track, a lot of them have a problem with latency, and unless you have, you got to make sure you have delay compensation turned on. I'm pretty sure there's an equivalent of delay compensation in other audio programs where it kind of just syncs everything up to the same amount of latency. Every track has the same amount of latency. So if you're tracking, sometimes what I like to do is track and edit at the same time. Like I kind of like to do it as fast as I can. It'll save me work for later. Like I'll go through these, I'll go through the first few steps first and maybe not get to the rest of them, maybe get to the rest of them later, but it's always in this order when I'm doing singing. So maybe I'll just do like 1 through 3 while I'm tracking, or maybe just 1 and 2, and then go back and do the rest. So it's all about saving time, really, because the more work you can get done that sounds excellent, the better.
Amen. Andrew, strip silence is something that I haven't quite used before, but we have a question from the internet from Frickin' Rockstar asking, have you ever used WaveLab for your editing process, and is it acceptable for someone to use?
WaveLab, no, I haven't, and I actually don't know anything about it.
Great. Well, at least that's a true answer.
So, sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, there could be alternatives, and if you're understanding these concepts, that's what I want to drive home. For my workflow and on Pro Tools, this is the right way to do it. So if you understand these concepts, why you don't use a noise gate, why I'm using strip silence, if you can find alternatives, that's great, because you'll be able to do these same things and use these same concepts and save time in the same way. You're still doing the same thing that I'm teaching, but it just has a different title, for instance. So if you're not on Pro Tools, there may be some other thing that does the same type of thing as strip silence. Actually, I think Nuendo and Cubase might have something equivalent, now that I'm thinking about it. I saw my good friend Dan Corniff, who built my compressors for me in my studio. He uses Nuendo or Cubase, and he was doing the same thing. So I know that there exists alternatives to this. Okay, so, and this is invaluable here, zooming in. It'd be easy to be zoomed out and be like, oh, okay, well, you know, these end over here. Well, you zoom in, you just cut off the end of her vocal, you know? So I've been doing it long enough that I know that I'm not gonna make a mistake like that. But, you know, if you're just starting out, getting into this really heavy editing, you might not wanna, do the step number 4, where you save an alternate playlist or put these all on a different track. Okay, so I'm just not going to use strip silence for us today, but that's basically strip silence. The end pad obviously is the opposite of the start pad. It just changes where the end. I'll just demonstrate that. Yes?
So does the strip silence, does it have a fade built in, or you still have to put the fades in, right?
I do.
Okay.
And I'm going to go over fades
Okay.
last. But there's a really awesome, fast way to do that. That's why I'm not putting these in as I go. Because normally I would be flying through this, and then I would just fly through this, and then I would just do fades. But I'm taking my time so you guys understand all these concepts and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So luckily this is an easy vocal track, so I can devote this kind of time to explaining all this stuff. Okay, so again, we have the same amount of silence after the track. Same thing here. Now, if you want to, I mean, I can see, like, whenever I look at these things, I know what is a breath and what is a sound and what is a mistake. And I can tell when I look at it, you might want to actually listen to these tracks while you're editing. And we have quite a different vocal here. We'll show how to fix that. That'll be interesting. I thought we tracked that. Again, could be wrong, whatever. Anyway, let's continue. This gap I'm not clearing out because it's another end of the vocal into the breath. Now, whatever you're doing on one track, especially if you got doubles, should be the same on all 3 tracks, because it's going to cause problems with you later when we actually get into melodyne. Okay, and that's the end of the track there. So I really need to talk about nudging. She did a really good job, so I didn't do any nudging. Here's an example. So where's the nudge in Pro Tools? And there's an equivalent to this in other programs. This is a really simple function, but what I like to do, this isn't the best example of this. Let me just show you what it is. You can move, oops. Which one is it? Okay. On Pro Tools for Mac, it's Control plus or minus on the numeric keypad. Hopefully you have a numeric keypad while you're using Pro Tools. So you can move, as you see here, you can move it over just by just a little bit. Now, if it's just a vocal by itself like this, I wouldn't actually use it. I should probably go to a spot where you would want that more than right here. But if you see up here in the top of Pro Tools, this little guy here says nudge. Usually the settings I have it on are 0, 0, 0, 30. So just move it by small increments. But let's say, let me find a spot. This is usually only for between punch-ins, not just the vocal. Okay, so if you will, see here, you can see the different sounds here are off from each other. Now, from my experience, I'm going to assume that this should be on that line. This guy should be on this line. This guy should be on this line. So what I would do, let's say this was, let's pretend this is a punch-in here, and I want these to match up a little bit better. I would nudge it over like this, and what's cool is it keeps the edits, and what's also cool, oops, is, especially in Pro Tools, it keeps the fades. Now, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I edit and I have fades and I'm like, oh man, I want to edit that, you'll usually like move it over and then your fades are messed up. And that's a huge problem in Pro Tools. So this is an invaluable tool. I encourage you to, we're gonna probably have a better example of when to use this, because right now it might kind of seem like pointless. But yeah, go ahead.
Did you just basically splice a couple points and then nudge the center part there? How did you actually execute that? I was watching what you were doing, but I didn't catch the key commands.
I wish oh yeah, the key commands on Pro Tools for Mac is Control. Yeah, that means Control, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, so Control plus or minus on the numeric keypad. Yeah. I don't know why it's an up arrow. Shift 6 is an up arrow. Whatever. But
Andrew, there are overlays for your keyboard for Pro Tools, Mac and PC. That makes this whole process a whole lot easier. Is that correct?
I don't know. I have these all in my muscle memory, honestly.
Awesome.
And that's why it's kind of hard on this keyboard, because some of the buttons are kind of swapped and some are not swapped. So it's not like this button is always that button. It's like sometimes this button is that button. It doesn't make sense. Like you have the Apple button on here, but on Windows you have a Windows button, and I use that button, but it's not for the same things that the Apple button is for. And I have a Control here, but then the command, the Apple is usually the Control. It's pretty, so just so you guys understand, like when I'm like mashing these buttons and nothing happens, that's why. It's very confusing to switch over, and very versed with the Windows version of the shortcuts. So yeah, that is Control plus or minus on the keypad. Please just take note of that because we are going to get into that later and you'll be like, oh, okay, it makes sense that you would use it in this scenario. Right now, it doesn't really seem like, why wouldn't I just move that over? So let's just take a mental note of that for now. Okay, so very cool. We got our edits here. A nice little shortcut that you'll see me use a lot. On Mac, the shortcut is, that means Option / Alt F, and that centers whatever I'm working on. It's just a shortcut I do a million times. So like if I want to get to that and just see that or see this, Alt F just makes it as big as possible on the screen for me. So it's just a nifty shortcut that I found. Okay, so let's do fades. Now, what I like to do when I'm fading, okay, this is where the Alt, on Windows, where the Alt EFD command comes in really handy. Unfortunately, that's not on the Mac. But I like to use different fades for different reasons. So I like to use the linear fade, which is this one that I have on the screen, for the beginnings and endings of phrases. It brings it in pretty naturally sounding and smooth. So whenever you hit on this, it's Apple F to bring up the dialogue. And it's just called equal gain and make these standard. I mean, you can look on the screen to see these. Placement, centered, etc. All this is fine. You might want to just uncheck adjust existing fades because later on that might be on and you might be messing with something by accident that you didn't mean to. Length. Now, in my mind, what I'm thinking that this function is going to do is put the fades in the beginning and ending of all of these phrases. Now, it's also, if you can see here, we have edits between the vocals, and I want different fades on those, and I'll explain why. So whenever I do these fades, I actually usually make them pretty long. It's 150 milliseconds. So that's a pretty long fade, typically for editing. So I zoom in. It's actually covering the vocal a little bit. I actually don't want that. That's a little bit too long, so let's just try 100. That looks good. So suddenly, you've got all your fades in there, which is awesome. Now the fades, for the breaths, you may or may not want to make longer. Let's hear this one. So sounds natural. That's what you're looking for. Okay, so these guys right here. Now, you may have to take my word for it because this is kind of case specific, but the fades that you use to actually join sounds, I usually use, it's called equal power. So let's bring up that dialogue again. Control F. It looks a little bit like that. So if you have just a bunch of, let's say, white noise or silence or even a vocal there, and you want to join them without hearing it dip out, this is how you do it. Whenever you have it on equal gain, sometimes you do hear it dip out. So instead of having to listen to every single crossfade that you do, and this is why I'm saying you may just have to take my word for it, but sometimes you have a ton, and this is going to be the best for joining sounds, the equal power. So you're not going to have, I mean, this is, that will still sound fine. This fade is a little too long. What I'm hearing here, and I am being super picky right now, and you should also be. I can hear it fading from one to the next. And I don't like that. I usually never like that. So let me show you what I would do. Let's say we have, okay, this is actually, here we go. We'll talk about nudging right here. This will make sense. So let's say we did have our fade here. And we don't want it to sound like she's fading in and out. You have all your stuff in there. It sounds good, but you don't want to mess with your fades. Your fades are fine. So I would actually move the part over a little bit. And I know it makes this part offbeat, but don't worry about that right now. So the further you move it over so that her actual breath matched up with the other one, whoops, that is in the wrong spot. The closer to natural it will sound. Like there, that sounds natural. So that puts this way off, but at this point that actually does not matter. Sometimes I'll do this where the most important thing is that your vocals sound natural when they're soloed. That's what I like. Like, if you can listen to your vocals soloed, they should sound natural. They should sound like one take. Because sometimes your vocals are going to be put on blast, like if you're teaching a creative live class later on in life, or like an a cappella version of your songs are being released, or there's a remix, or anything. Maybe someone will make an acoustic version out of the vocals or something. You have no idea. You always want your stuff to be great. So I like all my edits to sound as natural as I can make it. Now this is offbeat, but that's fine. We'll get to that when we actually do Melodyne. We'll just nudge that over, but the most important thing now is that this edit sounds natural, because you can't fix that in Melodyne or any other way. Okay. Let's see here. So if this was PC, I would just hit Alt EFD really fast, but now I have to carefully select it and hit delete. Or you can actually just change it by hitting Alt F, but sometimes you have a ton of crossfades. That's why these shortcuts are important. So we'll just change that to equal power. For some reason, do we have a, yeah, we got a fade there. Some other cool shortcuts with fades, like if you did want a longer fade at the end or the beginning, F puts, if you have a part highlighted, F will make it the length of whatever you have highlighted. And then, oops. And then let's say we want a longer fade on the right, we'll hit G. And if we want a longer fade on the left, we hit D. And these are really valuable shortcuts. So it would be like that. Or you could be way over here and hit it, and it will still make it that long. So those are really cool shortcuts. The more shortcuts you know, the faster you can be, the more you can get done, the less thinking you have to do. Keeps the workflow in the studio at a good pace. Yes?
Just one more time, up in the upper right corner, there's the yellow box. You check that.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to push Command. You can just push G or D.
Right.
And
I
it
don't think these
automatically
actually
does that. Great.
Yeah, these don't work unless you do that at all. You have to have that enabled.
Okay, but that eliminates the extra Command key or Apple key or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
Now, I encourage you, whatever audio program you are working in, look for these shortcuts. They probably exist. And like I say over and over again, these concepts are the most important thing to understand. Okay, so next step, let's refer back to this. We did the nudging. That might happen a lot more depending on how many cut-ins we have, or punch-ins. We went through the fades in different types. We're not going to group the tracks and create an alternate playlist. Maybe just for this, like if we release this session for you guys to mess with, I'll just put those down there so you can have the original takes. We may or may not do that. Don't take my word for it. but sometimes it's good to save that stuff. Okay, so let's talk about Melodyne. How many of you guys are familiar with Melodyne? Okay, cool. Just curious. I think it's something that everyone should know about, especially if you're doing audio. Now, this is my favorite thing here. Melodyne Bridge will connect you to Melodyne Studio. Now, before I actually do this, I actually want to talk about Melodyne. Yeah, okay, so we got all that stuff ready for pitch correction. Why do we use Melodyne? Melodyne sounds absolutely incredible. It has an automatic, and to me, an unparalleled formant correction, which what happens if you've ever used like older versions of, let's take Antares Autotune, for instance. There's a bunch of different modes and different ways that you can use that. And it does have sort of an automatic formant correction built into it, but to me it doesn't sound nearly as natural as Melodyne. You can be pretty extreme with Melodyne and get away with a lot, especially if you have a rough vocalist. It's really easy to edit. Actually, let me talk about formant for a second, because some people might be like, what is that? The easiest way I can think about it is, let's say you raise the pitch of a vocal, suddenly it sounds like Alvin and the Chipmunks. And it sounds weird and unnatural, and you sound tiny, or you lower it and you sound like slow motion, you know. Formant correction takes care of that. It doesn't mess with that. Well, I mean, it does mess with it to an extent, but it keeps the naturalness there. So it takes away the Alvin and the Chipmunks sound or the slow motion sound, which is a very awesome feature. I was really excited when that finally was developed in the digital world. So to me, Melodyne has the best sounding formant correction, so it keeps it sounding really natural. And whenever you're actually moving the timing of notes, it's a lot easier to use and to sync things up in there. So it's really user friendly too. So I highly recommend it. So what we're using is Melodyne Bridge and Melodyne Studio. Now there are other versions of Melodyne. They are cheaper. However, to me, this is the absolute best one because you can save, in Melodyne Studio, you can save sessions, and that is really awesome. So if you're not making these alternate playlists, you can actually save your session, and you can go back and edit the vocal as many times as you want, and it doesn't mess with the quality of it at all. So if you did something you didn't like it, you don't have to like re-pitch correct the same vocal. You can re-pitch correct the original vocal again, and it's saved in the Melodyne session that you save, which is awesome. And it's another way to keep things organized. Sometimes if you are messing with pitch correction and you have, I think Melodyne, I don't remember what the Melodyne plugin is that goes into Pro Tools, but sometimes the information you can store in there kind of gets lost or messed up, or to me it's just more stable and less buggy because vocals obviously are really important, and that is the last thing you want to get messed up. So Melodyne Bridge enables you to actually transfer the audio files, and let's do this now. What do we got here? Okay, so what you'll do if you have Melodyne Bridge, Melodyne Studio, if not, I encourage you to go buy it. It's one of the best investments that you'll ever make. You just find the plugin Melodyne Bridge, put it on whatever channels that you're going to pitch correct. To me, the most that it will handle well at a time is 8 channels. It can handle more, but it's something, I don't know. I've had strange problems after 8, so I just like to keep things from not messing up. as much as possible. Just a little Melodyne tip there. Okay, so each channel, if I lose anybody that doesn't know Melodyne Bridge or Melodyne, please stop me, because I know this very well and it's hard to know what you don't know, what you guys don't know. Okay, so we're going to connect to track 1, 2, and 3 from Melodyne. Usually when you bring in Melodyne Bridge, Melodyne will pop up automatically, but you might not, that might not happen. So load up Melodyne Bridge, just open Melodyne, and you can just make a new session and it will automatically sync up. There's not really much to it there. Okay, so all right, here's some basics of Melodyne. We're going to go over this, how to navigate, zoom. There's a quick menu, how to select all, whatever. Correct picture dialog, correct detection. Okay, so these are some shortcuts if you want to take a screenshot of this, whatever. I am all about shortcuts, so. Anyway, what? Anyway, where are we here? All right, so all you got to do in Pro Tools is hit play. And it'll
I'll trade this money for some time.
load. So right now it's just loading the audio tracks into Pro Tools.
Like digging for gold. It's getting old. My words are only in my mind. Like coals, they burn a hole inside. I gotta let them go. It's getting old. We weren't meant to be. We weren't meant
It's
to
loading.
be alone.
What are you talking about? You're just playing the song.
Take it all, 'cause you'll miss the years as they go by. Take it all, 'cause a race to the end is a futile fight. Oh my, you'll never know final goodbye.
That's it. Okay, I made a mistake. There was something that we did correct, but you know what? I'm gonna put it back for this. I don't know if you guys remember earlier, I noticed that one of the tracks was way off, and I thought we corrected that, and we did. I actually just didn't move the take down in the proper spot. But I'm gonna leave it because sometimes this happens after the vocals leaves, you miss something. You didn't realize that it was so off beat. And I'm gonna show you how to correct that. Okay, so we got all the stuff there in Melodyne. Now, a few things that I like to start out with. You want to be able to see the pitches on each of these notes. So it's always show pitch curve, and that'll show you exactly what's going on. Oops. There we go. That shows you exactly what's going on in each pitch. So Melodyne kind of all these blobs, Melodyne kind of separates them by the actual audio blob and different note. And then it kind of averages what you're trying to do and like guesses what note it is. Like this, obviously this is vibrato, and so it's an automatic detection where instead of cutting it up into a bunch of notes, it's just an intelligent correction or guess that it's just one note with vibrato in it. So Melodyne is really smart and super easy to use. Okay, so let's go back to the shortcuts. What we want to bring up is the correct pitch dialog, which is Option Command P. And oh, whoops, there we go. So what that does is I just hit Control A first, selected all the audio in the song, and then I automatically corrected everything. Now this might not be what you want to do at first, especially if you're not very familiar with the melody, because sometimes Melodyne will guess what note it's putting on and you don't know what the singer was actually going for, so sometimes you might want to listen to that original take. But for me and for time's sake, we're just going to correct them all like that. There's two different settings here: correct pitch center, which is basically how far it will put the average of the note onto the correct note, and then correct pitch drift. Sometimes you may be, she's sang pretty well, so it's actually not making the biggest difference in the world. But as you can see if you can see right here, there's kind of what the heck is the shortcut? Okay, so if you look right here, this is what the pitch drift is. She hit the note, but she kind of curved up and then back down. What that does is it kind of takes the average of what the overall curve was and corrects that. Now there's another mode that gets in even finer where you can flatten all that stuff if you wanted to. But I don't like to do that. I like to keep it a little more natural. So let's listen to what we got here.
I'll trade this money for some time. I'll take whatever I can find. It's like digging for gold.
So she was pretty close to these pitches, so these are going to be right pretty close anyway. All right, so what I'm doing is I notice here that she hit.
It's like digging for gold.
She hit just a tiny quick note. And the first note was a little bit flat, so the way to fix that, because it's actually two notes, is to just separate it, which is, if you can see here, it's just a very subtle move. This is how you move the note up and down. And then this is how you actually separate the note. You just have to move it above the note. And if you move it too far, it disappears. So you just gotta find it. I don't know, it's kind of weird. To me, it's really natural. Like I know right where it is without having to do that. So whenever you're in Melodyne, especially working on long sessions or important sessions, you want to save them. So let's call this, oops. What am I doing? Okay, so take it slow, vocals.
I'll trade this money for some.
Now, let me point out something really quick. This is something that a lot of people, when they're pitch correcting, do wrong. And I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of this. But the beginning of this note is actually coming up from below on purpose. Some people correct that. They'll take this and they'll move it all the way up, so there's so it starts just completely that's not exactly flat, but
I'll trade this money for.
when you do you're doing some weird stuff. But I hear people do that all the time. They think that it's important to flatten that stuff out. You're actually completely ruining the vocals. And after you do that, if you don't have the original vocals, you've ruined your stuff. And all these little things are the things that I have memorized, so as you get more experience, you don't have to worry about messing that kind of stuff up. But okay, here let's talk about vocal timing. This is a lot different than drums or guitars or anything like that. I wonder if I have this in an actual note. Okay, I don't think so. Whenever you're correcting vocals, what gets the beat is the vowel, not the consonant. The consonant does not get the beat. The vowel gets the beat. The consonant will usually come in early or something like that. So what I see here, this is a consonant because there's no pitch. As you can see, when you say S, there is no pitch. If you say so, where the vowel comes in, that's what gets the beat. So we would move it here. I wasn't guessing what word she was saying, but That's time. So even though the T is kind of a hard sound, the sound that's going to kind of cut through the mix the most and sound off beat is going to be the vowel. So that's super important when you're correcting vocals. Now, I'm insane when it comes to fixing vocals, and I like every word to be on beat. So you can see here, anywhere that you see the pitch start is where you need to move the stuff on beat. So just holding in Option on a Mac enables you to slide it without it snapping to the grid. Otherwise, it's like that, just chopping. Okay, so.
I'll trade this money for some.
So let me show you Melodyne. Here's an example of format correction. So you could move a note.
I'll trade this money for some.
And it still sounds relatively natural. You could be insane.
I'll trade this money for some.
And it almost sounds like she went falsetto, which is insane. That's even possible.
I'll trade this money for some.
I mean, this is why I like Melodyne. You really, you got to get pretty. You got to get really crazy for it to sound.
I'll trade this money for some.
You know.
That one's going platinum, Andrew.
So Melodyne. Whenever you move things down, though, this is a Melodyne tip, which is on this keynote really here. Save long sessions. It's important to be familiar with the melody. Obviously, like I said, whenever you're doing this stuff, you don't want to put the pitches in the wrong spot. So we got. What I was going to say is these are really important when you're using Melodyne. Whenever someone sings, if they're off and they're going to be off and you know it, encourage them or guide them to be flat instead of sharp. Because if they're flat, Melodyne specifically sounds more natural when you go, if they hit the note flat and you got to move it up versus them overshooting it and then moving it down.
I'll trade this money.
But even though that sounds natural, other people's vocals.
I'll trade this money for some.
So as you get lower in Melodyne, it kind of sounds like they put their hands over their mouths.
I'll trade this money for some.
I'll trade this money. So it's like, it's important to know all these tiny things whenever you're using Melodyne and stuff. Yes?
So in terms of like timing, when you're trying to just determine where to put the vowel sound, is that on a grid or?
Yeah, this grid, I didn't mention this, but this grid syncs up with the tempo of Pro Tools automatically.
Okay.
So this grid is correct. Like all these bars and beats are in the right spot. So I know, I mean, maybe this is just because I've been doing it so long, but I know where all these notes are supposed to be. Sometimes you're wrong about it, but when you actually, as you can see, where I just moved that, I kind of wish there was a line. There might be a way to make the grid a little bit finer, but this line is right in the middle, and that's where this needs to be. It's really easy to ignore those little notes in between.
And also, I feel like I used a version of this where like the instrumental could be like in there as like a guide. Do you ever load the instrumental in to listen?
No, that's what's awesome about Melodyne
I'll
Bridge.
trade this money for some time.
Yeah, it goes right with Pro Tools. That's what's cool about Melodyne Bridge. I forgot to mention that.
I'll trade this.
Yeah, so whatever you do in here goes
I'll trade this money for some.
to Pro Tools immediately.
I'll take whatever I can find. It's like.
So if I didn't like the way her timing was, like if I wanted her to do a different cadence, you could switch it up.
I'll take whatever I can find.
I mean, that sounds dumb. I wouldn't want to do that. But it's pretty easy to change the actual timing of
I
stuff.
can find. It's like digging.
Like she rushed that word. It's easy to move that stuff better.
Find. It's like digging for gold.
All these. This is what I do. I go through every single note. Yes.
So I'm noticing you're making these timing corrections on one track, is this automatically going to link the other 2 takes of this to the same edits?
No, but I will
Okay.
get to that in a second.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just going to get through this really quick so we can
My walls are only in my.
actually look at the other things. We're going to be using this for mixing, or maybe not. Hopefully I get through it. I'll just kind of zip, zip, zip. Okay, this is a good spot where you would want to separate the notes here. Kind of looks weird. I don't know what's going on.
But I gotta let him go.
Oh,
But I gotta let him go.
all right. So after you separate the notes, you want to bring up the correct pitch dialogue again and just recenter those notes to the correct pitches.
Inside I got.
Okay, so right here, okay, let me talk about slurs for a second. If you guys don't know what a slur is, whenever you have a note
I
versus it's easy when you're doing pitch correction to just totally get rid of those by accident. So in Melodyne, if you did accidentally do that, you can go up to edit pitch, reset all pitch related changes to original. So if that was like a really weird hard edit, you would be able to get that right back to where it was. So also, something else I did that I did without even thinking, let me go back. So it automatically cut this here. The way you want to think about it is you have the note, then the slur, then the other note. So that's not 2 notes, that's a note, a slur, and a note. So you need to think of it like that. So you want to split it where the slur begins and ends. Now you can see here there's kind of like a hard drop. That wasn't natural. That's not how she sang that. So you reset that, you got a nice natural looking curve there. And then we'll reset the top and bottom note. You can, if you don't like where that slur is, you can move it up or down.
Inside I got.
And oh, that was wrong.
Inside I got.
Maybe you didn't like the way she did it. The best way for me to edit a slur, like if it's too fast or something like that, is just chop it up. And I mean, this is really meticulous. If there's a better way to do that, I don't know. But anyway, for the most part, you probably won't ever have to do that.
I gotta let him go. Let him go. I let him go. But I gotta let him go.
Okay.
Scared no.
Yep, so those are different notes.
Scared no.
All these matter. All these matter. So this I know is getting no, no, no. So this is a little rushed.
Scared no.
That's what it's supposed to be. And that's why I'm saying it's important to be familiar with the melody and what it's supposed to be on beat. Make sure you get involved with vocals. And when you send out vocals to be corrected by somebody else, you're going to find that they do mess things up because they weren't there and they don't know what the plan was. Sometimes somebody does hit a weird note on purpose and they'll mess it up, or there's a slur that was supposed to be there and they'll get rid of it.
We weren't meant to be. We weren't meant to be alone.
Let's see.
We weren't meant to be.
Okay, so this right here is a little more complex. This is an M sound, which you can't really see that obviously.
We weren't meant to be.
But when you say meant, the meh, the E, which is the vowel, gets the sound. The M still does have a tone, same thing with N's and stuff like that, but it's the vowel that gets the beat.
We weren't meant to be.
Like L has that too. Lost, the O would get the beat. You gotta remember all this stuff.
We weren't meant to be alone.
Okay. Whoops. Oh yeah, this dialogue that I bring up is right click and hold, and then you can just go to these different, the pitch modulation and pitch drift were, you can edit that by just bring it down so you can like,
Take
So you can do like super auto-tune stuff if you want.
Take it slow, 'cause you'll miss the years as they go by.
And I just want to say, there's like some kind of crackling sound in this that shouldn't be there. I don't know what it was, but just so you guys know that we know that's not supposed to be there. It's some technical glitch. If this was a studio that I used all the time, we would really get down to the bottom of it to make sure that those little things aren't there, but that's how it is. Just making you guys aware.
They go by. Take it slow, 'cause a race to the end is a futile fight. Oh my, you'll never know a final goodbye. You'll never know a final goodbye.
Okay, so after you have the first one, when you bring up the second one, this is what happens. You see in the background, there's like a little, like a guide, kind of like what you did. So you do our quick little shortcut, Control A, Option Command P, Enter, and that will automatically put everything there. So you kind of have a guide. You can easily, it's like, okay, well, that one's supposed to be there. This is a separate note. We went through there. We took our time on the first track. You can easily fix the second one so that everything is, the same. So it goes a lot faster after you get the first one done. Now remember, these tiny edits I'm making, I'm holding down Option and clicking.
I'll take whatever I can find.
Okay. Separate notes, just find that little guy and double click. Okay, so this looks a lot different.
It's getting old.
Okay, so this is actually supposed to be pulled back here.
It's just getting old. It's getting old. It's getting old.
So if you see what I just did, the it's very small, but it's there, and I just sync those up by dragging them to the right spot.
Old.
Okay, this is a good situation here. You got one note, she kept solid, and the other one, she dipped down. So you can make the creative choice if you want one to go down, if you want them to both go down, or if you want them to both be up. You can
Getting old.
and either one will sound pretty natural, so it's not the end of the world when you have little differences like that. Yes.
With this particular song, are you keeping all these takes to lay over each other, or are these takes that you're going to edit into one single vocal?
The verse part of this, actually, that's a good question. What I'm doing is I'm taking all the takes and I'm editing them all. For the verse is going to have one vocal in it, and that was a creative choice on my part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the best takes out of those after it's been corrected. And then in the chorus, there's going to be 3, and I'm going to show how to blend those in a pleasing way. So I like to just correct them all and then choose. You could do it in the other order if you want, but sometimes it's better to see. Sometimes people hit weird small things that you may have missed. So it's better to have more options. That's how I look at it.
My walls are only in my mind.
Okay, so I want this on the and. This should be on the and. This looks like another little transition.
Only in my mind. My walls are only in my mind.
Okay.
Like coals they burn.
All right, so here's our other slur. Keep the integrity of that by separating it into its own thing.
Inside, I gotta let him go.
This could
I
be.
gotta let him go.
And so switching between the tracks is as easy as clicking on whichever one that you see.
Let him go.
So this maybe should be more on the beat.
Go.
Okay, and whenever you have, okay, here's a good example. I actually don't get a lot of singers that have a ton of vibrato. So this might be a little weird for the demonstration, but whenever you are stretching out a note, this is in a super extreme situation, but when you're stretching out a note, this is a really good tip, whether you're using Melodyne or anything else to stretch it out. You want to stretch the middle. You don't want to stretch the ends, because the ends, no matter how long you hold out a note, you're not going to say it in slow motion. You're going to say it, hold out the middle longer, and then the end will still be the same. So when you're stretching it, oops, come on. So what I'm doing is I cut the end and the beginning so they're the same, and I'm just stretching the middle. Now she's doing some really intense vibrato, so that may or may not work out so well. Yeah, sounds fine.
Hey, Andrew, quick question from the chat room. How are you toggling between the track 1 and the track 2 vocal? Is that a keystroke there?
No. Just whenever I see it, like when I see it sticking out, like if I see a different one, I just click on it and I can switch.
Okay.
Yeah, really simple. That's why I like Melodyne. They really thought of workflow here. So let's correct that.
Yeah, no.
And I like looking at this and thinking that it looks like a hot dog with mustard on it. It's fun sometimes. Okay, so I see this one is shorter than the other one. So here we go. I'm going to choose the shorter one. Same deal. By the way, I just moved that out. I just moved that down so I can see it. It's just something I do without thinking. So we'll just keep that there. So what I do is same deal. Shorten it the same way. Bam. Yes.
So when you're shortening it, you're not shortening the end or the beginning. You squash the middle.
Just the middle. Just
Okay.
the actual note part. Yeah.
Okay.
Because whenever you're, like if you did slow it down, it might sound like instead of saying a word longer, it would be like longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's the middle part that you want longer, not the beginning and the end of the word.
Which is probably the vowel.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And Andrew, we just have a few minutes left before we're going to go to break. So if you find a good ending point,
Okay.
think about
That
it.
is, yes,
Okay.
I will. We are, okay, this is fine. This is fine. I'm almost done here with, I'll just do two tracks for this and we're almost finished here. And luckily we're going to be doing more Melodyne in different situations. I know, like, obviously you're not having, see, I did it again there. Just move the end.
Bye.
So you're going to have a lot of different situations, and that's why I want to go through Melodyne a lot, because we're not going to run into every single problem with this vocal, because she did a great job, and this isn't like maybe typical of a lot of the viewers, because they do more heavy vocals. So here it is. Excuse me. Here it is again. Just stretching the middle there.
Bye. Oh my, you'll never know a final goodbye. Know a final goodbye.
Okay. Cool. All right. So we'll just do two tracks for now. This guy's muted. We'll just say, make that inactive. All right. So all you got to do to import it into Pro Tools is select the section that you want. And then, very important. Melodyne, this is not, whenever you first install Melodyne, this is not the actual preference. You have to go to Preferences, then Other, and then down at the bottom it says Enable Spot to Pro Tools. And that's how you can get it to go automatically over to Pro Tools. Otherwise, you got to go find it, import it, put it in the right spot, blah, blah, blah. That's a lot of work, especially when you have a lot of work to do. Okay, so to enable that, that's how you do it. Melodyne, Preferences, Other, then Enable Spot to Pro Tools. So now, to get it out of Melodyne, we save the audio. We're not using track 3, so I'll uncheck that. Make sure it's in your whatever audio format preference, WAV, whatever your file format is. Be very careful. Make sure this is at whatever rate you're doing. Make sure it's not lower. 16-bit 441 will sound worse, and you'll hear it immediately. So, okay, this is kind of weird. I just save things like this because it just makes a temporary file to import into Pro Tools.
And so, Andrew, up to that point, you weren't working with essentially a destructive track. You weren't doing anything destructive through Bridge. It was basically just referencing it in your Pro Tools session, and until you saved as, it wasn't recreating the.
Yeah. Well, what happens is because whenever you load it into Melodyne, it makes temporary audio files that aren't in Pro Tools. It's just in another folder. When you install Melodyne, you'll see it. It saves them in a temporary folder, and then whenever you save your session, I guess it makes a copy in whatever anyway, Melodyne makes its own files, and it's editing those, but it's not even destructively. It is referencing files and just making the changes. So yeah, it's not destructive, and that's what I really like about it. Okay, so for whatever reason, it's only did. Oh, range. For range, click entire arrangement. That's what it should be on. Okay. I'll show you why I do that in a second. Funny. I don't know why track 2. Usually it just saves like track 1 and track 2 like automatically. I don't know what just happened. Okay, that works. Okay, so after you have it into Pro Tools, this is a very, 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 very important step. Your vocals will disappear if you don't do this. And you'll be like, what just happened? Consolidate them. Please, everyone, make a note. Consolidate them after they're in Pro Tools, because that puts it in your Pro Tools folder. Otherwise, they're in random folders on your desktop or wherever you save these. You just consolidate. Option Shift 3. Just select them, hit Option Shift 3. That consolidates it, puts it in your session folder. Super important. I have lost so many vocals this way by accident. And when you tell a band that you lost vocals, they're not very excited about it. So what I did was those basically the junk folders where it saved those temporary files are on the desktop. I usually just delete those. Those don't matter to anything as long as you've consolidated. It's in your Pro Tools folder. If you delete those and it's not, they're gone. And there's a problem. So please consolidate those files and keep them in your Pro Tools folder. So next is Vocaline. We don't have enough time to get into Vocaline, but we are going to because it's super duper important. So
We do that when we come back?
yeah, we'll just do that when we get back. I didn't know how long this would take. So
No problem.
It's better that there's more, to be honest with you.
yeah, there's it's definitely really. This is where people mess up the most, especially when I get sessions. Man, I need to send this video to those people. Please watch these things. All these tiny little things that seem, maybe you knew about it, maybe you didn't, but they're all just as important. So
It's a good place to break.
yeah.
Cool.
We're good.
All right, let's ask some questions.
Yeah,
You guys
well-
have any questions in the studio audience?
I haven't seen Melodyne before. I had only seen like the Antares pitch correction, and I thought it sounded robotic. I hated using it. But most of the time when I'm in the studio, I'm just working on my own vocals, and I have the time to sing it 15 times and make sure it's perfect. This is a great time-saving tool.
Oh yeah, especially because of how natural it sounds. Like,
Yeah, it's amazing actually to my ears what I'm hearing, and I love the timing flexibility. A couple things, just for a newbie like me to the program, what's the general price range of this?
the studio is about $600.
Okay.
They
and-
have, I mean, if you get there's like an editor, it's a standalone version. You can't go in between Pro Tools, but you can import an instrumental version into that one and use that as a reference. It's not as time efficient because you can't go back and forth as fast,
Okay.
but it's
Just-
a lot less. It's like several $100s less.
Okay, but does the studio version include the bridge?
Studio version includes bridge. Yes.
Okay, so it'd probably be worth the investment just to
Oh
save
yeah,
the time.
I'm telling you, man. If you don't buy anything else for vocals, you buy this.
Yeah.
This is.
Considering how natural minor shifts sounded after a session's done, and you suddenly go, "Oh wow, I'd love to have like maybe a third or a fourth harmony."
Yeah,
Can you use this and just double a track and then pitch the next track? Have you
Yeah,
ever
we're
done
actually.
things
I'm
like
going to
that?
show you how to do that. I want to show you how to do that. But yes, you can do that. Some people do it. I'm not a fan at all, but I will show you how to do it. I'll show
Awesome.
you the best. If you're going to do it, I'll show you the best way to do it.
Okay, great.
Yeah, because there's a right and a wrong way to do it.
Yeah, it's a very valuable program.
Oh yeah.
We have another question from the chat rooms. Brick is asking, sometimes Melodyne does weird things with breath, the S's and the T's. Would you recommend splitting them and unhitching them?
Yes. Sometimes it does do weird sounds with the breaths, but what I like to do, if I can't figure it out, if I can't reset the pitch to the original, so it's basically unedited completely, I'll actually import it into Pro Tools and take the original file. If I know, it's rare that it happens, but if it does happen, I'll take the breath from the original file and put it in over top of it. I mean, that's a last resort. That is rare that I have to do that, but that is definitely a workaround. Sometimes you can't just fix that in Melodyne, but it's a good question. That
Cool.
definitely happens.
One more question before we wrap up the segment. Stevie Nicks would like to know if you suggest people learn to edit manually first and then rely on things like strip silence.
Yeah,
I guess
maybe.
maybe the question is, do I learn the analog version before I go digital and start messing with the tools that'll make it easier? Is it best to learn the basics, I guess?
Yeah,
and
I'd
edit
say,
yourself.
Yeah, I'd say edit yourself kind of to understand it, and you'll naturally want to pick up speed and seek out these methods, and I've revealed them to you. So yeah, I guess it might be easier to do it and do it slow when you don't have, you have time on your side and you don't have to rush. But
Okay.
you can still get good results, obviously, if you do go fast and use these tools.
Perfect. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. It's awesome getting into editing and Melodyne today. Basically, what we're going to be doing in our next segment is editing male vocals, and it's going to be a little bit different from what we had in this section. Did you want to speak a little bit to what we're going to be covering in that section?
Yes. Well, now, vocal line. So we're going to kind of start with the session again. I'm going to go over vocal line roughly. But vocal line is super important. So we're going to go over vocal line, and something that a lot of people struggle with is editing raspy vocals, which is very, very challenging. Some people think it's impossible, but it's not, and I'll show you how to do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. What we're going to do is take a 15-minute break here, and we'll be right back with more Creative Live and Recording Rock Vocals with Andrew Wade.
Okay, but before we go, I have a comment that I'd like to read here from Scott RMN, who said, I'm excited to see what Andrew has in store for us today. Even if it was half as fun as yesterday, it would be amazing. Today is going to be awesome. So people have been watching and digging it. And for all of you people who maybe are new to Creative Live and you have decided that you would like anytime access to this course, which I talked about this morning, I just want to explain how to use our site. So below the window that you're watching, there is a buy button, a blue button, and purchasing anytime access means that you can watch this course for free and check it out and see if it's something that you would like to own and be able to rewatch and study. I know this stuff is pretty complicated and it may be hard for you guys to soak it all up as we're going along. So if you purchase anytime access, that means that you will have segmented videos that are broken down by topic and you can rewatch them at your pace and just study them and be able to really retain all this information. So you can do that for $99 for this 2-day course. If you purchase it while the course is live, which means just today, because we are running out of time as far as that goes, you can get it at a discounted price of $79. So if you've decided that you want to own it, go ahead and purchase it while we're at break.